Chapter 10: Applications in the United States and other wealthy countries. Whenever I am asked if Grameen can work in other countries, I respond emphatically that it can work wherever there is poverty, including in wealthy countries. Poor people throughout the world are worthy of credit. The initial interest of many American individuals and organizations in Grameen led me to believe they might try to replicate our program for the benefit of the poor, the homeless, and the unemployed in the United States. I was not prepared for the amount of skepticism I encountered. What struck me was not so much people's doubt as to whether microcredit would succeed in the United States, but their pessimism about whether anything would actually raise people out of poverty rather than merely alleviating its symptoms. Many Americans argue that their welfare state has created a lazy underclass of dysfunctional individuals who would never be interested in or capable of starting their own businesses or supporting themselves. I knew Americans, not just wealthy or educated Americans, but Americans generally, to be remarkably resourceful people, and I was surprised by their skepticism. I decided to keep my eyes open for anyone interested in giving microcredit a try. It was not until the mid 1980s that people in the United States began showing real interest in applying Grameen principles to their own poverty problems. Poverty problems. I suppose it all began in 1985 when Bill Clinton, the governor of Arkansas, was looking for ways to create new economic opportunities for the low income people of his state. Hillary Rodham Clinton's college roommate, Jane Piercy, had just returned from working in Bangladesh with an American organization and was at the South Shore Bank of Chicago. She introduced the Clintons to Ron Grzazinski, and Mary Houghton, Chicago area bankers who had done much to convince the Ford Foundation to support Grameen. Ron and Mary advised Governor Clinton that a Grameen-type program could be an answer to the poverty problem in his state. They suggested that he set up a bank designed specifically for the poor in Arkansas. The governor was intrigued and he invited me to Arkansas on my next trip to the United States. In February 1986, Ron and Mary arranged for us to meet. Governor Clinton was attending the annual Governors Conference in Washington, D.C., and so we met in the Four Seasons Hotel. Governor Clinton, Hillary Rodham Clinton, Ron, Mary, and myself. Bill Clinton was Bill Clinton is a man of voracious curiosity. He wanted to know everything about Grameen, how it got started, how it works, and why nobody had tried it in the United States. As I spoke, both the governor and his wife were drawn to my story. After half an hour, Mistress Clinton declared, "We want it. Can we have it in Arkansas?" "Why not?" I said. "If the governor is committed to it, how can it not happen?" Clinton turned to Ron and asked him how long it would take to get the program started. Ron explained the steps necessary, all the legal clearances and permissions, concluding that it would certainly take at least 6 months. The governor was impatient. "That's too long," he said. "Can't this be done any faster?" He turned to me as if seeking my help. "If you want me to, I can start it tomorrow morning," I said. Clinton gave me a broad smile. "Can you really do it?" "That's what I want. I want you to do it." I explained my plan. To avoid the legal complications, we would set the bank up as a simple credit program Ron and Mary would then buy the bank as one of their projects. In the meantime, we would start organizing the borrowers. I promised Mrs. Clinton and the governor that I would visit Arkansas to present an outline of the project after meeting with state officials, potential borrowers, bankers, academics, and business people. The following week, I got my first taste of Arkansas. State government officials made elaborate preparations for me to meet with small business owners. Ron and Mary accompanied me. I was introduced to a local radio station owner, a fast food operator, a retail outlet manager, and a drugstore worker. But at each successive stop, I became more and more withdrawn. These were not the people I needed to meet. The Clintons had told me about the widespread poverty in their home state, but I was not seeing any of the poor people I was supposed to help. None of these people were really poor. I was looking for poor people. I expressed my frustration to the state officials. These are the smallest businesses in the area, they explained. We don't have any poorer business people. No, no, I said. I don't want to meet poor business people. I want to meet just plain poor people. They looked at me as if I had spoken to them in Bengali. Obviously, they did not quite know what to do or where to take me. Do you have welfare recipients in this state? I asked. Perhaps there is an office that administers your welfare program with lists of people who receive benefits? Yes, we do have such an office, they answered. Okay, I said. Let's get the welfare list and start visiting the people who are on it. My hosts made a few quick phone calls. It was at this point that our trip began to get interesting. I was taken to meet with welfare recipients. I asked one group, suppose that your bank were to lend you money to start a business. How much money would you ask for? The room was silent. No one seemed to understand the question. Finally, one person said, I don't have no bank account. But what if you did have a bank account? I said. Again silence. What if you had a bank account and your bank were to lend you money? What would you do with it? Can anyone tell me? Doesn't anyone dream of starting a new business? Doesn't anyone have a hobby that might help earn some cash if done full time? I went around the room asking each person individually. I wanted to gauge the interest of the American poor in self-help and self-employment. Critics had predicted that microcredit would have trouble in the United States because, whereas Bangladesh has a long tradition of self-employment, less than 10% of Americans work for themselves. They argued that Americans typically required lengthy and intensive training before they were ready to go into their own business. This sounded contrary to the can-do spirit I had always witnessed in the United States, among rich and poor, black and white, Asian and Latino alike. In my gut, I believed such criticisms underestimated the average American. Every day I read about white-collar and blue-collar workers being fired by their long-time employers. It seemed clear to me that future generations would grow accustomed to having 2 or 3 different careers in the span of one lifetime, and that self-employment would become more common. So I was eager to see how Americans trapped in poverty, some for 2 and 3 generations, would react to our effort of credit. The fear and incomprehension on the faces of those poor people in the community center of a small town in Arkansas was the same as I had seen countless times in Bangladesh. So I spoke as calmly and naturally as I could. Look, I run a bank in Bangladesh that lends money to poor people, I said. And last week, I had a meeting with your governor. He asked me to bring my bank to your community. I'm considering starting a new bank right here in your town. I have come today to find out if any of you would be interested in borrowing money from me. I heard some chuckles in the crowd. It was obvious the people in the room did not really believe me. I went on. My bank is a special bank for the poor. It requires no collateral and no credit check. All I need is someone unemployed or on welfare who has an idea of what he or she would do with the money. But if there is no business for such a program, why would I open my bank here? I could go somewhere else and give loans to poor people in some other community. That is why I'm asking if any of you have any ideas of what you might do with a loan. One woman who had been listening carefully raised her hand. Afraid that I might not notice her, she called out, "Hey, I'd like to borrow from your bank." Okay, I smiled. Now we are in business. How much would you like? I would like $375. Everyone laughs. What do you want this for? I asked. I'm a beautician and my business is limited because I don't have the right supplies. If I could get a nail sculpting box that costs $375, I'm sure I could pay you back with the extra income I would earn. Would you like to borrow more than that? I asked. No, I wouldn't want to take a penny more than what the box actually costs. Another woman raised her hand and said, I have been unemployed ever since the garment factory closed and moved to Taiwan. I need a few $100s so I can buy myself a used sewing machine. I want to make clothes and sell them to my neighbors. Another woman raised her hands. I want $600 to buy a pushcart so I can sell my hot tamales, Tamales, hot tamales, or tamales. Forgive for my pronunciation. Hot tamales in the street. My tamales are famous in my neighborhood. If I had a pushcart, I could sell them better. Every suggestion gave me reason to hope. These business plans and aspirations of really poor Americans had a great deal in common with the poor of Bangladesh, Malaysia, and Togo, Tiwo Jiwo. The Graeme pilot project in Pine Bluff, Arkansas was put in the hands of Julia Bindasius, an MIT graduate and second-generation American of Lithuanian descent. Julia was working at the South Shore Bank when I met her. She was young, but extremely able, and I suggested she be put in charge of the pilot project. Everybody was surprised by my recommendation. Julia had never been to the South in her life. The project was originally named the Graeme Fund, but we soon discovered that the name Graeme complicated matters and made Ron and Mary waste a lot of time explaining the history of Graeme and Bangladesh. One day in my office in Dhaka, I received a call from Mary in Chicago. She recommended that the project be renamed the Good Faith Fund, suggesting that the bank does not rely on collateral, but rather on the good faith of its borrowers. Of course, Good Faith Fund made a lot more sense. It was simpler and easier to understand. The Good Faith Fund slowly grew to reach hundreds of low-income people in Arkansas. When Clinton ran for president, he often used it as an example of a successful, innovative means to fight poverty. At one point, Clinton announced his intention to start a nationwide network of microcredit programs modeled on the Good Faith Fund. This prompted many telephone calls and letters from the United States. During a 1992 interview with the editors of Rolling Stone magazine, Clinton spoke particularly fondly of Graeme. In a separate article, two of the editors ridiculed him for being too ready to promote microcredit in the United States. I was disappointed, but an American friend explained that Rolling Stone's reaction was hardly surprising. He argued that Graeme was a third world technology transfer and that the American elite might not be ready for it. Given the reluctance of Americans to adopt successful policies from countries as close to them as Canada, Germany, or England, it would prove very difficult for Clinton to convince his fellow Americans to follow a Bengali model. As president, Clinton continued to take a personal interest in the Good Faith Fund in Arkansas and to support microcredit, but unfortunately, since the election of a Republican Congress in 1994, he did not spend much political capital placing microcredit on his national agenda. Nevertheless, he continued to visit microcredit borrowers on his international trips during and after his presidency, and his vocal support has spurred the creation and expansion of many microcredit programs. My experience in Arkansas was repeated in many parts of the United States. In South Dakota, Dakota or Dakota. In South Dakota, I stayed with Gerald Sharman, director of the Lakota Fund, and his wife and two children. Gerald trained at Graeme in Bangladesh in 1988. He and the rest of the staff of the Lakota Fund, a leading microcredit program assisting Native Americans, are members of the Sioux Nation. They showed me the beautiful quilts made by Native American women who used to have no economic opportunity but now receive microloans. Microloans hold their meetings in churches and community centers and sell their goods themselves. In Oklahoma, a most impressive tribal leader, Chief Wilma Mankiller, also took an active interest in the Graeme program. When I visited the Cherokee Territory, Cherokee Territory, I met with a group of about 24 Cherokee women. Their faces were absolutely expressionless. I told them about Graeme, and they just sat there stony-faced and silent. Stony-faced and silent. I said, "Well, your reaction here is far more encouraging than anything I have ever encountered in Bangladesh. There are women actively trying to avoid me. They would run away from me, saying, 'No, no, no, we do not want or need your money.' We would run after them, but still they refuse to listen. At least you are seated here and are listening to me. That is extremely encouraging." No one laughed. "Does anyone in this room need money?" I asked. No answer. No hand lifted. No eyes moved. If you don't need any money, would you happen to know of a neighbor or a friend who might need some? After a long silence, a hand was raised. "Yes, I have a neighbor who I think could use some money," said one woman. "To do what?" "To buy himself a little stove on wheels so he can sell tacos. 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 "And is he good at that? Does he know how to make tacos?" "Oh yes," said the little woman. "He is the best taco maker in the area. Everyone loves his spicy meat and crispy tortillas. 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 Well, send him around. I am certain we could give him money. Does anyone else have a neighbor or a friend who needs money?" The Cherokee women in the room all thought for a while. Then another hand was raised. "I know that people in this area love puppies, yes?" "Could I get a loan to raise and sell puppies?" "Well, if you think you could succeed economically and that you could earn enough to pay back a loan, why, yes, of course we could lend you the money. How much would you need?" "Well, I don't know. To get a kennel, Kennel, to get a kennel, to advertise, and to buy dog food. I suppose I would need $500 for my first litter. Litter, first litter. Well, now we are in business. I'll lend you $500. You agree? Just like that?" "Just like that." Everyone in the room started laughing. I could see people's eyes lighting up. Others were now raising their hands and sharing their money-making ideas. "I would like to sell potted plants," said one. "I have a green thumb. Everyone I touch grows well." "Do you own land?" I asked. "There is no problem. Here on the reservation there is no private ownership of the land. It is free to anyone of the tribe who wants to use it properly." "And do you think you could sell potted plants?" "Oh yes, that would be easy." We came to an agreement for that loan, and I could see the others in the room scouring their brains for creative new ideas. By the time I left that meeting, they were all asking, "Yunus, when are you coming back? Bring money next time." Wow. Ron and Mary were not satisfied with simply helping the rural poor. Soon they set their sights on urban America. Some years earlier, they had bought an ailing, AILING, ailing community bank in a poverty-ridden area of Chicago. The South Shore had been abandoned by white store owners and white-run businesses because blacks were moving into the neighborhood. Slowly, their South Shore Bank won back the community's confidence, acquired new depositors, and began lending to individuals whom traditional banks had avoided. When the Ford Foundation needed some independent bankers to appraise my proposed guarantee fund, Ron and Mary were asked to visit Bangladesh to evaluate the Grameen Bank. From the outset, they loved what we were doing and hoped to accomplish the same in the ghettos of Chicago. GHETTOS, ghettos of Chicago. In 1985, at the request of Ron and Mary, I visited Chicago for the first time. I was invited to talk to social activists, economists, bankers, and community leaders. Almost everyone I spoke with dismissed what I said, arguing that the Bengali experience could not be relevant to poverty eradication in the United States. They claimed that Chicagoans needed jobs, training, healthcare, and protection from drugs and violence, not microloans, and that self-employment was a primitive concept lingering only in the third world. Low-income people in Chicago needed money for rent and food, not for investment. They had no skills anyway. I advanced the same arguments I had made to bankers in Bangladesh. "The poor," I said, "are very creative. They know how to earn a living and how to change their lives. All they need is opportunity. Credit brings that opportunity. Perhaps our two societies are different and thousands of miles apart, but I don't see any difference between the poor of Bangladesh and the poor of Chicago. The problems and consequences of poverty are the same." No one seemed convinced. Only Ron and Mary believed in me. Mary took the lead in establishing the Women's Self-Employment Project, WSEP, a non-profit organization that over time implemented a variety of innovative anti-poverty programs. Among them was the Full Circle Fund, FCF. Started in 1988, FCF offered low-income women access to investment capital of $300 to $5,000 if they agreed to join a group of 5 peers and were able to present a sound business proposal. The credit rating or access to collateral of the prospective borrowers was not taken into account during their loan approval process. Connie Evans, executive director of the WSEP, and Susan Matteusi, a recent MIT graduate, were new to the microcredit business but very willing to learn. Before launching the FCF, Connie and Susan came and lived in Grameen villages, spending long sessions with our field staff and journal managers. When they returned to Chicago, they followed our Grameen handbook to the letter. Letter. To the letter. It worked, but there were frustrations. Through the FCF, I witnessed directly how welfare laws in the United States create disincentives. Disincentives for welfare recipients to work. Those who receive welfare become virtual prisoners, not only of poverty but of those who would help them. If they earn $1, it must be immediately reported to the welfare authority and deducted from their next welfare check. Welfare recipients are also not allowed to borrow money from any institutional source. In fact, under the then existing laws of Illinois, microcredit programs such as the FCF could not approach welfare recipients at all. WSEP had to negotiate with the welfare authority to get a special dispensation. I was brought to the state welfare authority to testify that credit can help people get off welfare and that they should consider giving welfare recipients who become members of the FCF a waiver from the law for an experimental period of 3 years. After protracted negotiations, the state of Illinois approved a 1-year waiver, WAIVER waiver. Subsequently, this waiver was renewed on an annual basis. Now, thanks to the success of the FCF, the law in Illinois has been amended to allow people on welfare to borrow money. Defying all conventional advice, DEFYING. Defying all conventional advice, the FCF made a bold start. Skeptics argued that the 5-woman group idea would not work because Americans are too naturally independent. Not only did the peer system work, it worked in one of the toughest neighborhoods of inner city Chicago. To encourage prospective borrowers to form groups, the FCF organized regular parties to help people get acquainted. I was invited to meet the borrowers, visit their homes, and join them in celebrations once the FCF was well underway. In the faces of the poor people in Illinois, I saw the same excitement I had seen in the eyes of village women in Tangile. I heard the same expressions of self-discovery, the same aspirations, the same warmth in their voices. Of course, these urban Americans were not raising chickens or husking rice, but they knew what they could do to earn an income. They were confident in their skills, and I was impressed by their creativity. One borrower used her loan to buy ingredients, bake, and sell coffee cake. Another, known for her storytelling, produced audio tapes of her stories and sold them in neighborhood stores. 2 other borrowers designed and sold clothes in a jointly rented store. One particularly moving experience I had in Chicago occurred while I visited WSEP borrowers in a Hispanic neighborhood on the west side. I was shocked to hear that the English language had basically disappeared from the area. All I could hear was Spanish, and as I could not speak a word, I became doubly dependent on the bilingual WSEP staff members who toured with me. TOURED, who toured with me. They took me to meet several members of their borrowing groups. One of those members, a frightened-looking woman in her early 40s, spoke only Spanish. I told her, "These are beautiful quilts and embroidered designs you make. When did you think of starting a business with this?" Through an interpreter, she explained her life to me in great detail. When Jenny, a staff member of the WSEP, came and talked to me, I was scared. I thought she is going to try to sell me something. I avoided her. She came back another time with another woman, a Hispanic woman from the neighborhood. They tried to talk to me, but I was still too afraid to listen. They were talking about business. I had no understanding of business. My husband has a hard life. He works in a factory. He gets very angry if I ever try talking to outsiders. He does not like me to leave the apartment by myself. I didn't know anybody in Chicago. I had been living here with my husband for the past 15 years since I came from Mexico. Jenny kept coming back. And she told me about the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, a faraway country. She told me how women in that country changed her lives. I liked the stories she told me, and I wished I could be like the woman in that country. But here things were so rough. I did not dare do anything by myself. My husband would kill me if I created trouble for him. I started talking to Jenny. She introduced me to other women in the neighborhood. I listened to them. They told me about their hard lives, about their children, about their husbands, about their parents, their brothers and sisters, their childhood. I saw how alike we all are. I saw how alike we all are. We talked about Jenny and about the WSEP and about the Grameen Bank. We began to imagine what we might do with loans. We encouraged each other and collected information for each other. Finally, we formed a group. Two by two, we took loans. We helped each other in business. I have paid back my first loan of $600. Now I am in the middle of my second loan. I took $1,000 the second time. Do you have problems in selling your products? No, not at all. I'm behind in filing my orders. I'm behind in filling my orders. I could sell much more, but I do everything alone by hand. I have nobody to help me. My son goes to school. He's always out. I'm the only one home. Are you happy with the income you make? She remained silent for a long time. Then, in a whisper, she started talking very slowly. I assumed that she was saying that the money was not much, but it helped her, something like that. When she stopped speaking, the interpreter said in English, I never expected that I would ever earn money. My husband never gives me any money to spend. We shop together, he pays. I never had money of my own. For the 15 years that I have lived in America, I have never even had a bank account. Now I have money and I have my own bank account. I have a checkbook. My husband does not know anything about it. I have not dared to tell him yet. I did not know what to say. To hide my emotion, I asked. Many people tell me that if WSEP did not insist on forming groups, it would be so much easier for people to borrow. Do you agree? She looked at me when the interpreter translated the question and replied softly, in the 15 years I have been here, I never had a friend. I didn't even know anybody. I was all alone. Now I have many friends. My 4 friends in the group are like my own sisters. Even if the WSEP did not give us money, I would not leave the group. Her eyes filled with tears. She covered her face with both her hands while the translator relayed her words. Alex Counts originally came to Grameen as a Fulbright scholar, Fulbrigst, Fulbright scholar in 1988. In 1996 he wrote a book, Give Us Credit, comparing the impact of Grameen in a village in Bangladesh with that of the Full Circle Fund. Because he spoke both English and Bengali fluently, he was able to immerse himself completely in the lives of borrowers in both cultures. He collected so many interesting stories about microcredit's effect on women's lives that the first draft of his book was more than 600 pages. After many painful editorial decisions, it was reduced to about 350 pages. It is the most fascinating storytelling I have ever read. Today, Alex is the president of the Grameen Foundation USA, GFUSA, the Washington, D.C. based non-profit organization discussed in Chapter 9. The Jump Starts Grameen style microcredit programs in places such as Tulsa, Oklahoma, Dallas, Texas, and Harlem in New York City. As members of many organizations in the United States, Canada, and Latin America cannot imagine traveling to Bangladesh, we direct them to GFUSA. There are also many US programs that have taken the microcredit idea and adapted it. Some do not require borrowers to form groups, others do not target the poor. Many do not focus on women. Quite a few offer only business training, as opposed to credit. These organizations, some 250 of them, have formed a network called the Association for Enterprise Opportunity (AEO) to coordinate their activities and hold annual conferences. We keep in close contact with the 50 or so AEO member organizations that operate along Grameen principles, as well as the many other AEO members that use alternate approaches to microcredit. Microcredit has also succeeded in Europe, both in wealthy Western European countries that suffer from high unemployment and in the poorer Eastern European nations now emerging from communist rule. But though many European charitable organizations, not to mention intellectuals, bankers, and journalists, are interested in our ideas, few are willing to initiate microcredit programs themselves. I have addressed German parliamentary committees in Bonn and the German Council of Bishops. I have appeared before French TV audiences and received honorary degrees in England, but still people refrain from real action. Maybe Graeme upsets too many preconceived European ideas. Maybe Graeme upsets too many preconceived European ideas. Yeah, fascinating. In the developed world, my greatest nemesis, nemesis, nemesis. So, nemesis means the nemesis of a person or thing is a situation, event, or person which causes them to be seriously harmed, especially as a punishment. That is the meaning of nemesis. Another definition of nemesis is that, or nemesis is another enemy, and an arch enemy indeed. In the developed world, my greatest nemesis is the tenacity of the social welfare system. Over and over, our clones have run into the same problem. Recipients of a monthly handout from the government feel as afraid to start a business as the porda-covered woman in Bengali villages. Many calculate the amount of welfare money and insurance coverage they would lose by becoming self-employed and conclude the risk is not worth the effort. Some borrowers do try to take loans in secret, hoping the government will not find them out. But government inspectors are often quick to track down any entrepreneurial welfare recipients and immediately remove their state benefits. In industrialized countries, informal businesses are akin to illegal street hustles. To be legal, the self-employed poor must file documents, petition bureaucracies, and keep accounting books. It is wholly unrealistic to expect an inexperienced, relatively uneducated person to satisfy all the requirements of a bureaucratic state. As a result, many of our first borrowers from Grameen-type programs in Europe are technically lawbreakers. They are counseled to get paid under the table and to keep their loans off the books. Often, even when the law allows a poor person to own a business, charity program operators will not allow it. One young man, newly out of prison, wanted to start up a French fries stand. The Parisian charity that housed him would not accept this independence. Instead, it opened its own food stand and hired the man as a salaried employee. But the situation in Europe is slowly changing. An increasing number of intellectuals and social scientists no longer look to the state as a savior, but turn their eyes to private initiative instead. One such impressive visionary is Rosalind Copicero, a Polish graduate of Oxford University and the Wharton School of Business, who became a high-powered executive at the J.P. Morgan Investment Bank. Rosalind had never made loans smaller than $100 million when she read a Financial Times story on the Grameen Bank during a flight between London and Warsaw. She immediately realized that microcredit was just what Poland needed. She discussed the idea with Poland's finance minister, who immediately challenged her to quit her job and devote herself to creating a Grameen program there. In December 1993, she decided to accept the challenge. She left J.P. Morgan. Rosalind and her small team examined 200 different lending methodologies. They tested 9 pilot models. They wanted to adapt Grameen to the traditions of their country. Today, they have 20 branches lending to 4,000 clients, with a repayment rate of 98.5% and loans of $10 million. Rosalind's organization, Fundaj Micro, intends to be self-supporting with a full banking license. When I reflect on my previous career, it seems two-dimensional, says Rosalind today. It lacked soul. What I do now has put real meaning in my work and therefore in my life. She is just one of many social entrepreneurs who have devoted their lives to helping provide microcredit opportunities to the poor. Another microcredit visionary is Bodil Mal, who worked in the Norwegian Fisheries Ministry. In 1986, Bodil came to visit her husband, a Norwegian consultant living in Bangladesh. One of Bodil's assignments in the Fisheries Ministry was to encourage young girls who had grown up in the Lofoten Islands to return home. For some years, this island, situated in a rather desolate spot off the northern coast of Norway, had been experiencing a serious depopulation problem. Though young men often returned to the islands after university, the local girls did not. There was little incentive. While the women waited for their fishermen husbands or fathers to return from sea, there was almost no social or commercial activity to occupy them. They suffered from loneliness. Once the girls began disappearing, young men started to leave too. A similar depopulation problem was also occurring in northern Finland and in the nearby region of northern Russia. But thanks to the ceaseless efforts of Bodil Mal, the government of Norway decided to initiate a Grameen project through the Fisheries Ministry. This project offered women commercial credit for income-generating activities to help keep them on the islands and make their lives less lonely and more meaningful. I was invited to visit the projects in northern Norway and was astonished at what I saw. Another social transformation, similar in scope to what we were seeing in Bangladesh, but of a very different nature. Now, for the first time, the women of the Arctic Circle had access to credit. And thanks to the program, they had access to community support groups and financial opportunities. Currently, they are using their loans to make such diverse items as sweaters, SWEATERS, as sweaters, paperweights, postcards, wooden troll statues, and paintings of the local scenery. The work provides them with an important source of income and helps them and their families to cope financially. More important, however, the Norwegian project promotes microcredit as a tool for social integration and an effective way to add new meaning to people's lives. Nearby countries have caught on. In Finland, Finnish Microcredit Limited has started prototype operations in the Helsinki district. The cooperative Eco Oshuara, forgive my pronunciation. Some names are difficult to pronounce. Eco Oshusra, a green credit union, gives microloans to people in ecological and social fields. 4 other microcredit initiatives in rural Finland are governed by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. All of these are based on the model Networks Credit Model. NET, TVER, KSKRE, DIT, MODEL. Networks Credit Model began by Bodil Mal in Norway's Lofoten Islands. Right, this is the end of the chapter 10. Applications in the United States and other wealthy countries. On the next episode, I'll read the next chapter, chapter 11, Graeme in the 90s. But until then, thanks for your curiosity and desire to listen and learn.